I call the March 8, 2022, is it a closed session? I don't think so.
No. Special meeting.
Special meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, would you be kind enough as to give the public instructions on how to participate?
Thank you, Mayor. This meeting is a hybrid meeting. You can attend, the public can attend in person, or they can watch it online at fullerton.legistar.com or on cable television. They can participate in public comment either here in chambers, or if people would like to participate with comments over Zoom, they can log into Zoom and enter meeting ID 978-4219-1797 or call 1-669-900-9128 and enter that same ID number. And all that information and much more is on our website on the agenda.
Thank you for that. Madam City Clerk, would you please kindly call the roll?
Mayor Jung,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker,
Here.
Councilmember Silva,
Here.
and Councilmember Zara.
Here.
And Councilmember Dunlap is not yet present.
And Madam City Clerk, would you be kind enough as to make the announcements for the interpreters this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. If our interpreters would please come to the podium and, just like last time, please make your announcements and let people know you're here for assistance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mayor Hernandez Castellanos, and we do have Spanish interpretation. We have the equipment here. Buenas tardes a todos. Tenemos interpretación simultánea en español. Los aparatos se pueden encontrar aquí enfrente de la sala. Gracias.
Good evening. I'm a Korean interpreter, Sun. 안녕하십니까. 오늘 공청회에서는 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 통역이 필요하시면 앞으로 오셔서 통역사를 찾으시면 헤드셋을 제공해 드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.
My name is Bao Lu, Certified Court Interpreter in the Vietnamese language. Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi đến đây để giúp cho quý vị thông dịch tiếng Việt nếu những ai cần. Chúng tôi sẽ ngồi ở dưới. Xin cảm ơn tất cả quý vị. Thank you, Councilman.
Hello, I'm Helen Hall, and this is my partner, Bo Huan. We are both Mandarin Chinese interpreter.
好，各位好啊！我们这里有2位国语的翻译为大家服务。好，
请在第3台听中文，谢谢。
I thank all of our interpreters for their presence this evening. This evening's invocation, I'm going to invite Pastor Jason Phillips of Sojourners Church to please give us the invocation. Pastor Phillips.
Thank you. It's good that Councilmember Dunlap showed up because I was going to wait for a long time. Yeah. Let me pray. Lord, what a gift it is that you've given us this community. You've given us each other in this city. You've given us wonderful staff that work in the city and council members and a mayor who devote so much of their time for the goodness of our city, Lord. And so I ask it right now, Lord, as they discuss redistricting, Lord, I pray that give them wisdom, that you give them insight, you help them to hear and listen and pay attention to the things that maybe are hard to pay attention to, Lord, and help them to come up with our vote on the most equitable and best solution, Lord. And I pray that tonight is life-giving, not just for all those who are attending here, Lord, but for our council members who have to work tonight. It's in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Phillips. Would you like to say a few words about your ministry, sir?
No, other than I do a lot of collaboration with a ministry called Fullerton Act, and some neat things are happening with our schools, especially our Title I schools. A lot of churches are starting to partner and work with our principals in helping those students in that neighborhood flourish, basically being a resource for our principals. So I'm excited about that work.
Are you still serving our police department as well?
I am still serving our police department.
Thank you for that.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to.
Thank you. And with Councilman Dunlap's arrival, if I can ask him to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. Center your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Dunlap. Do any council members have ex parte communications to report?
Yes, I have spoke this afternoon with some the OCEA representatives.
Thank you, Councilman Silva. Any other communications to report? Seeing none, we'll now move on to public comments. Before we ask the individuals that are making public comments this evening to come forward, if you require an interpreter, please let us know. Moreover, we are limiting public comments to the sole agenda item that we have. So this isn't a basic public comment. If you have comments on the agenda item, which is redistricting, please feel free to come forward. So public commenters or anybody wishing to comment, please do so.
Can I get clarification? Is this meant to be the public hearing or something else? Is this the only period in which people can comment on the redistricting process?
Well, let's ask the city attorney.
There will be a public hearing portion, Mayor, where the public will be allowed to comment. So it might be worth having the public comments during the public hearing if they're being limited to that item.
Very well. So we will move forward on this and allow the public to comment thereafter. Mr. Gamble, how can I be of service, sir?
Can I speak?
Of course.
Curtis Gamble, activist for the community, basically. I just want to say something about the districts, the zoning. I rather see it be like kind of like a tic-tac-toe, because a lot of us we get kind of confused when you start drawing the little lines and making the little circles and going through sharing the community. It would be simple for the community if it's just if the map is very easy to read. You know, you can just look at it and you see what district everybody's in, instead of having it all zigzag throughout the whole city. So if you can kind of do like the tic-tac-toe type thing, I would appreciate that.
Very well, sir. Thank you. I will go ahead and ask our city manager to respond to any issues. Obviously, there is
We
one.
do have one
that
hand
Mr.
raised
Gamble?
in Zoom, if
Okay.
you'd like to take that one.
Mr. Gamble had requested that the maps be more legible, right? Mr. Gamble, yes. So I assume that when we have the demographer, we have staff making the presentation of the maps, it'll be a little larger and hopefully we can respond to that accordingly. Any responses there?
No, just the only other fact is that we have very set criteria in which we have to follow when we draw these lines. And so invariably they will have some jogs and zigzags because that's complying with the criteria that you'll hear spoken to tonight.
Very well. Any council members wish to make reports this evening?
Mr.
Councilman
Mayor,
Silva.
yeah, I
Go
just
ahead,
had a
sir.
question. So
Sure.
we're not allowing public comments on non-agenda items. We're
That's
just-
correct.
Okay, got it.
All right, any other comments or reports this evening? All right, very well. We will open the public hearing. It's redistricting of our city, focus map recommendations. So we will have, Madam City Clerk, would you introduce the outreach consultant and demographer who will make the presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. We are going to start with a virtual presentation from Jennifer Netwig of Trepepe Smith. And Jennifer, I see you online. Are you able to share your screen?
I am. Let me go ahead and
Great.
get that going. So while that comes up, I believe it is up now.
Yeah, it's up. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, good evening, members of City Council. My name is Jennifer Netwig. I'm a director with Trepepe Smith, which is the public affairs and marketing firm partnering with the city and with NDC for the outreach and engagement surrounding this important issue. So before you hear from NDC this evening with those criteria that you were mentioning and the recommended maps, I'll be sharing with you an update on the outreach and engagement, which really will provide context for you before you hear about those maps, so you know the engagement leading up to where we are this evening. So here you'll see briefly what I will be covering. essentially an update on our outreach and engagement efforts and a high-level overview of some of the significant communication efforts moving forward. We are toward the latter stages of the process, so our update will reflect that. So here on this slide, you can see a summary of the various types of media we are incorporating into the redistricting outreach. Redistricting content is being regularly posted and updated on the city's website, both on the city meetings and agendas page and on the city's dedicated redistricting page, which is cityoffullerton.com/redistrictfullerton. Through that redistricting page, community members can actually sign up for redistricting e-notifications that will go directly to their inboxes. So we have been sending out regular updates to subscribers with emails regarding redistricting events and other news. We've also been conducting direct outreach via email and phone calls to community-based organizations and leaders in your community, and that includes about 40 organizations on that list. We've been working with the city to develop and publish social media once a week in English and Spanish. We've been routinely sending press releases out about events like tonight's hearing. We've developed flyers about events, knowing that it is important, of course, to get some materials out in print for folks who might not be communicating regularly online. And so those have been available in the community in a variety of languages. And then we've also held 3 community workshops, that I'll describe in greater detail on the following slide. So in addition to the various types of media that we've been employing as part of our outreach, we've also been reaching out via a variety of languages. So through this process, the Secretary of State actually requires materials to be available in both Korean and Spanish for your community. But you have gone above and beyond that by having materials available in those languages, English, as well as Chinese and Vietnamese. So translated materials and interpreters have been provided for all 3 workshops for the hearing, as you can see tonight. And then we've also had translated materials provided for the website, for social media, and for those print flyers, like I mentioned. And then moving on to the community workshops, you can see here that there were 3 community workshops held. And this is another area where the city really did go above and beyond. The workshops are not required legally in this process, but they're a fabulous way of getting additional community engagement and input. So you can see there, the workshops were held January 13th at 6 p.m., January 29th at 10 a.m., and February 10th at 6 p.m. And that was purposeful to get some different days of the week, some different times to really try to get participation from folks who might be available different times of the week. And each workshop gathered about 15 to 20 public participants. The events shared background information about the process, gathered community input on communities of interest and neighborhoods, and really walked people through the public mapping tools that people could use to draw their own maps. And we did engage in a lot of questions and answers during those workshops. There were multiple points during each workshop when people could be unmuted and ask their questions freely and really have a dynamic dialogue. So through that, we gathered nearly 30 community of interest inputs from community members during the events. And for anyone who might be just hearing about these now or wanting to go back and double check what the workshops covered, those are all available, both the videos and the meeting materials on that website I mentioned, cityoffullerton.com/redistrictfullerton. And so that essentially leads us to where we are here tonight. Next, you will be hearing from NDC with an update on the criteria to consider and the recommended maps. But from here, we will continue to leverage all the different communication channels that I mentioned to publicize the outcome here tonight, as well as the next hearing coming up on March 29th at 6:30. And before I wrap up, I will just highlight the ways that people can continue to engage. So again, you can see that URL, cityofFullerton.com/redistrictfullerton. Folks are always welcome to contact the team directly via email at districtelections@cityofFullerton.com, or for anyone who might prefer to just pick up the phone and call a number, you can reach the team at 714-738 888-286-6350. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the city, pending any questions you may have on the outreach front. Otherwise, I think NDC is up next. But thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Councilman Zaros, please.
Thank you. My question is, how does we're a city of 44,000 people. 15 to 20 people is a very small number. Does this compare to other cities as far as participation?
Yeah, I would say that it is right around average, if not a little bit higher than average, actually, for those workshops. And I know percentage-wise, it does appear to be a low number, but particularly with everything going on in the world and the COVID environment with this cycle, we are seeing a comparatively lower participation rate than previous redistricting cycles. So I think with everything that you have put into that effort and the participation that you got, it's something that you can be proud of.
Thank you.
Councilman, anything further, sir? All right. Any other council members wishing to ask the outreach team about any questions? Very well. We'll move forward. Sir.
And we will move on to Dr. Justin Levitt with National Demographics Corporation, who is our demographer, and he's going to get in the nitty-gritty of why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Jung, members of the council, and members of the community who are listening and watching tonight. My name is Dr. Justin Levitt, and it's a pleasure to be here. And just to kind of put the number in context, there were more people showing up to each of our workshops than there have been participating in the entire Anaheim redistricting process up the street. So I think that we are seeing low turnout across the board. And we don't know whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the political climate, whether, what it is, but we are seeing more interest here in Fullerton, which is wonderful. So tonight I will walk you through a little bit about the background, as this is the first time we're presenting this to council, and take you into where we've gone so far and what our options are moving forward from here to wrap up the process by our April deadline. Essentially, we do have to revisit districts every 10 years following the census. And this is true even though the city only switched to districts in 2017. And so although these district lines have only been used for 2 elections, after the census data is released once every 10 years, we are required to take a look at the new numbers, the new laws that govern the redistricting process, including different changes in state and federal law, and make a new map or revise the map in accordance with those new rules. This particular cycle has been difficult. Normally, we receive census data in March of the year ending in 1. This year, we did not receive our final census data set from the state of California until September. So cut 6 months off the beginning of this process. We really worked on getting started. The prep work we did a lot of with the commission and the background stuff in October and November following the release of that census data, leading up to our first kind of blitz round of public hearings in December, right before the Christmas holiday, followed by community workshops throughout January and February. And in late February, February 23rd, the commission held its hearing to look at the different draft maps that had been submitted at that point and make a recommendation of maps to the council. Now, we did have a deadline of February 28th to submit new maps. We did not receive any new maps before the deadline. In fact, I believe none have come in since the deadline either. So what we have to present to you tonight is exactly what the commission also had. The council has this opportunity tonight to discuss the different map options, look at the map options, request any revisions, or have any discussion about them. This leads up to our 4th public hearing on March 29th, where the council will be asked to select the final map. Now, that final map that the council selects has to be posted a minimum of 7 days prior to adoption. And so this means that if there are any requests coming out of this meeting, or if any member of the community wishes to submit a new or revised map, we need to receive that, no later than March 21st, and that's kind of cutting it close because we need to have these posted on March 22nd for you to be able to consider them. And this is a hard deadline because we do need to have that map available for the community to view and discuss for a full week, 7 days, prior to that council meeting on the 29th. And so we would actually suggest that if you are interested in submitting a renew or revised map, aim to have it into us by the Friday before that weekend, which I believe is the 19th. So that's kind of our, if you want to get it in. Of course, we're happy to accept public comments, including I would like the council to approve this map up until the day of the meeting. But if you are submitting a new map, that is our deadline. We are going to continue to update the schedule on the website to make all of this available, accessible to the community who looking at the website as well. Essentially, even if we wanted to keep our current district map, we would not be able to. One of the biggest things that the Supreme Court cares about is this number called the total deviation, the difference in population between the largest and smallest districts. In Fullerton's case, our total deviation is 16%, and that's above the 10% maximum that the Supreme Court considers presumptively constitutional. This was driven by growth in District 3 in particular, which is 9% over its ideal population, and less growth, particularly in Districts 4 and 5. District 4 is nearly 7% under its ideal population. District 5 is under by 4%. Now, I'll stress that of all the districts, only District 4 lost population from the 2010 numbers to the present. All the other districts did experience growth. It's just differential growth rates that's producing this. There's been more growth in District 3 compared to Districts 1, 2, and 5. We also look at our Voting Rights Act analysis on this slide. Currently, there are 2 districts that have a substantial Latino population, District 4 at 46% and District 5 at 44%, where Latinos make up a plurality of residents in both districts. And we also have one district, District 1, where Asian Americans make up a majority. And here we're looking at the citizen voting age, or the eligible voter population, as the courts call it. They use this number rather than total population to recognize that you could draw a majority Latino district by total population that could never elect a Latino because half of the Latinos in that district would be under the age of 18 or not citizens. And so therefore we use citizens of voting age as our number to look at this metric. This brings us right into our rules. These are the criteria that we have to follow when evaluating plans. We've talked a little bit about federal laws already, equal population and following the Federal Voting Rights Act. While race cannot be the only factor or even the predominant factor in the creation of a district, we must take into account protected class communities, groups that have been recognized by the Federal Voting Rights Act as having faced discrimination or barriers to registration and voting and obtaining materials in their language. And our maps, to the extent we're looking at this, we want to be able to justify any districts both under Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act, as well as all the other criteria. So these are not arbitrary districts, but they represent clear and cohesive communities. And that brings us right into the central column. This is the new section of the criteria. The state passed the Fair Maps Act in 2019 that outlined a rank-ordered list of priorities that the council needs to consider. The first, contiguity, is the idea that all parts of the district must touch. You must have one boundary around the entire district. I'm happy to say that all the maps we received actually comply with this criterion. Second, undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest. To the extent possible, we need to be able to keep together areas that should be kept together for the purposes of their fair and effective representation. Now, some communities may have to be divided for equal population or voting rights reasons, but other than that, we want to strive to keep together as many of our neighborhoods and communities as possible and minimize the division when we can't keep them all together. We also need to look for easily identifiable boundaries, so it's our third priority. This is to make it easy for voters to understand which district they reside in. So to the extent we can follow major roads and other natural and man-made boundaries, that voters understand, perhaps north and south of Bastonjury or north and south of Commonwealth, clear, easily defined boundaries are what is preferable rather than jogging through a neighborhood. And fourth, compactness. The law defines as not bypassing one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. This is aimed at hooks and fingers. And of course, because of this rank order, we see where the law emphasizes. So if a community does create an odd shape, we do want to create that odd shape to keep that community together first before we worry about compactness. The law also specifically prohibits favoring or discriminating against a political party. For that reason, it's not, this is not something unique to Fullerton. Cities and counties and all jurisdictions that fall under the Fair Maps Act have avoided using partisanship and presenting partisan information because we want the numbers to make sense on their own without any reference to partisanship. In fact, council cannot consider partisanship as part of this process. And in the third column, other traditional districting principles. These are principles recognized by the court that are after the Fair Maps Act and federal criteria. So we need to be able to justify our map first by the Fair Maps Act and federal requirements. And then when we think we have two or more equally good maps, we can use other districting principles as kind of that last take on which map serves the community best. These include factors such as minimizing voters shifted between election years, so that if voters are expecting to elect later this year and would end up getting moved to a district that next elects in 2024, we minimize that kind of situation. Or future population growth. The idea that if we do have more growth expected in a particular district, we can take that into account in a minor way. Also respecting the voters' choices, the principle that the voters elected a council and that it should be up to them rather than the stroke of a pen on a map as to whether members continue. Again, these other traditional principles can come into play after you have two or more equally good maps under the Fair Maps Act. This is where your discretion is allowed. In addition to our physical copies of the maps, we also have an interactive web viewer. This has been available on our website, and we probably will use it to some degree tonight. It is a wonderful resource that allows you to zoom in to each of the different maps, to look at streets, to see where boundaries fall. You can turn on and off the current districts if you want to view them or not. You can turn on and off the different map proposals to see how the lines would vary from map to map. You can even put on more than one and compare how two or more maps directly compared to each other. As we receive new maps, we've been adding them to this viewer, and it also has, like I said, the current districts, and it also has our population units, which we put together to help people create districts early on in the process. To jump back to the presentation, as I mentioned before, we did receive a number of draft maps from the community prior to the last hearing. In fact, we received 14 legal map proposals, 11 from the community that were population balanced, an additional one from the community that was not population balanced. We also received several communities of interest proposals, people who drew one district or a screenshot of an area or provided other information like environmental justice mapping to show how district lines should be drawn in their minds. From these 14 legal map proposals, the committee selected 3 focus maps, maps 111, 112, and 114. We have all 3 of these here today. Focus map 111, responding to a number of comments that were looking for a more central district 2, perhaps trying to, in some of the versions of this central district 2, trying to keep as much of the original town site or downtown area together as possible in district 2. We also, the 112 was sort of a hybrid map. It keeps most of the 57 corridor in one district, But one of the things we heard a lot about was trying to unite the different colleges, or actually keep the colleges united in the same district, but unify some of the neighborhoods in between Cal State Fullerton and Fullerton City College. And so this map strived to do that. We also selected map 114. Of all of the maps, I think 114 had the most following of major roads. It also, because of that, had a slightly higher deviation. So these are the trade-offs that we were talking about earlier on. This one really uses that intersection of Euclid and Commonwealth as kind of or Chapman. Euclid and Chapman as a major point where 4 districts all come together. It also keeps the 57 corridor in one district. In addition to these 3 focus maps, all of the maps we received, all the full map proposals at least, have been available and continue to be available for the council to review and discuss if you desire, and are available on the city's website and the interactive web viewer. Tonight, what we're looking to do is to continue the process of whittling down the maps to a preferred map, or if not a preferred map, what changes do you want to see that we can bring back for the 29th to pick that final map. And so with that, I'm happy to address any questions, and I look forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Levitt, for all your hard work. Before we bring it back to council for questions, we will open the public hearing and hear public comments on this matter. Any residents wishing to come forward, please do so now to make your public comments. Anyone in chambers? Please.
All right, good evening, council. My name is Mike Rodriguez. I'm a resident of Fullerton. And actually, I just wanted to speak about one of the maps in particular, map 110. And before I do that, though, I wanted to also let you know that I don't think the Zoom was available on the agenda tonight. So I was informed of this, and so some people had some issues with finding the Zoom so they could see it. So that could be an issue in terms of transparency. But with that being said, I'm just going to read off a few excerpts from a petition that was written and published yesterday by Blandy Morales. And it has 125 signers so far in one day. And it's about supporting Map 110 and bringing it to the City Council to take it up for a vote, along with the others. So it states this: we call on the Fullerton City Council to choose Map 110 to become the next voting district in our city. A wide array of residents, young and old, and a diverse set of community organizations led by Orange County Environmental Justice, ADI for Justice, a local Korean American organization, and OCO, Orange County Congregation Community Organization, have attended all the redistricting hearings and workshops and submitted this map. And on February 23rd, urged the Redistricting Commission to recommend Map 110. A majority of this commission dismissed and denied it, even though, by far, Map 110 had the most community input. Therefore, we, the undersigned, demand the council listens to the community and votes for Map 110. We knew that these problems would arise all along. Before the redistricting process even began, we urged the council to establish an independent redistricting commission that would take all voices into account and not be swayed by the politics of the council members. And that didn't happen. You appointed people to the redistricting commission. Now it's moved to advance 3 maps that were supported by a total of 2 community members. Meanwhile, a majority of the commission voted down the community-submitted map of 110 that had the support of 15 day of testimonies, 20 submission testimonies, and an 18-page rationale for each community of interest and district. 2 of the 7 members voted to advance map 110 only. So we urge the council to bring back this map 110, since it is within your purview and ability to do so. We urge the council to not diminish the renters' voices by cracking them apart with the vertical north-south configurations of districts that a couple of the maps have, right, that have been submitted by the commission, the redistricting commission. Thankfully, the current council is different than it was in 2015, when community members poured out with support for Map 2B, and they were still overlooked for a map that was supported by one slide bar business owner. This is the council's opportunity to show the residents of Fullerton that they can have a voice in the city again. the council can begin to make up for its mistakes in 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
All right, and we just urge you to,
Thank
to
you.
bring this map. Thank you very much.
Next comment, please.
And if we have any other speakers in the chambers, if you please line up so we don't miss you.
Hi, I do want to talk about, ask about the process and the Zoom link. Why I've been busy on my phone is because people have been asking me for that link, which was available on the agenda when I wrote the announcement for the Observer, but somehow it's been since removed. So, and another thing about the Zoom access is that the translation was fortunately available when there were the workshops that were Zoom only. Problem there was people calling in couldn't get translation, but tonight, even if someone does have that Zoom link, they don't have access to translation on Zoom. They have to come in chambers, and I don't think that was made clear to the public in advance.
Thank you. Any other comments in chambers? All right. Before we move on to Zoom comments, let's correct some of this issue. One, I'll have the city clerk announce the Zoom link to make sure that folks haven't had an opportunity to be able to get on the Zoom, be able to do so. Secondly, those that are commenting on Zoom that require an interpreter, we will afford you the balance of your time and have an interpreter ready to go ahead and interpret your words to council and to the public. That said, Madam City Clerk, would you reiterate the Zoom link, please?
The Zoom link is zoom.us/join, or you can call 1-669-900-9128, and the meeting ID is 978-4219-1797.
Thank you. I'm known for efficiency here on the dais, but I will slow roll this so any members of the public that wish to Zoom comment or call in can do so. So let's go ahead and proceed with the Zoom comments.
And we have at least 3 hands raised. Julia Gomez, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Julia Gomez. I'm a staff attorney at the ACLU of Southern California. And today we submitted a letter to the council urging the council to consider MAP 110 during tonight's hearing. MAP 110 was created by community members throughout Fullerton, including residents from all 5 districts and individuals who are served by RA for Justice, Orange County Environmental Justice, and Orange County Congregation Community Organization. The map complies with state and federal redistricting criteria and maintains communities of interest. For example, districts 4 and 5 maintain communities south of Chapman Avenue that are lower income, Latino, housing insecure, and impacted by environmental toxins and pollutants, while District 3 maintains Fullerton College, Cal State Fullerton, and Hope International University together, and also includes low-income communities that share interests around affordable housing and stable housing with college students in the area. The Fullerton Redistricting Commission, which is made up of the organizations that I mentioned earlier, and the residents, put together a really thorough narrative that goes district by district, explaining why they ended up with the configurations that they ended up with. And it includes pages and pages of written comment in support of that configuration. So again, although the Advisory Commission didn't advance the MAP 110, it is completely within your power to consider the map. The Advisory Commission only advises and recommends, but it's ultimately up to you to decide which maps you consider. I also wanted to flag that MAP 114, which was forwarded, does raise some concerns about conflicts of interest. That really goes back to the community's request for an independent commission. MAP 114 is a version of the map submitted by Commissioners Gregory Seaborn and Judge John Seminara. As we've previously flagged, Commissioner Seaborn is a former council member who ran for District 3 in 2018 and lost to council member Jesus Silva. The map not only splits Cal State Fullerton and Fullerton College into different districts, but according to community members, and I urge you to confirm this, it also pairs council member Silva with council member Nick Dunlap into District 3. Taken together, this raises serious concerns about whether some commissioners improperly consider political candidates when they voted to advance MAP 114. And we therefore believe it's imperative for you to continue to keep in mind that state law prohibits you from considering relationships with incumbents or political candidates as part of your communities of interest assessment. For that reason, we urge you to follow state and federal law and ensure that the map you adopt protects communities of interest.
Thank you.
And
Next
And
comment,
that's your
please.
3 minutes. And Matt Leslie, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Jung. I'm looking at the various maps, and I do not like the idea of the district in map 110 that seems to all hinge on the idea that you need to somehow keep Cal State Fullerton and Fullerton College together. I just can't grasp the rationale for that. And I know there were prepared materials. I don't see it. I don't know why you would want to create a district that stretches all the way from Hillshire Park to the edge of the city on the east. To me, that's smacks of what was done last time, where these little fingerlings were sent into downtown to create these absurd districts, to fill out numbers here and there for whatever nefarious reason. I do share concerns that there might be conflicts of interest in terms of what candidates are being are looking for, what district they might want to run in. I think that should be considered for anyone on the council and anyone on the who might be serving at the council's pleasure on the redistricting advisory commission. So please consider that can happen anywhere. I don't see why in map 110 you should have to drop down below Chapman to carve out a little piece. I think it's probably, the rationale is probably to say it's part of Fullerton College's area. I mean, there are areas down there that kind of relate to them, but it seems a bit arbitrary. And I think map 112 was some sort of attempt to improve that, unless I'm mistaken. And in map 112, I think it looks like Adelina Park is kind of split in two, which is really strange. I don't see the rationale for that either. And it all seems to be this kind of attempt to square a circle, again, to try to get the two colleges in one district for this incredibly long, lateral kind of thing that doesn't make sense to me. So I appreciate that community members worked on that map. Other community members submitted other maps that aren't being considered, that weren't forwarded to the council. So I don't know that makes a huge amount of difference, that there's anything particularly unique about 110 in that sense. I'm happy to say that none of them are as atrocious as the one that was adopted last time, but I would really encourage the council to try to consider that idea for why the colleges are supposed to be in one district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Kayla Sato, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, Honorable Council and Mayor Jung. My name is Kayla Sato from Orange County Environmental Justice, and I just wanted to say thank you for all the maps having the 2 Latino plurality districts, 1 Korean majority district, and an environmental justice district. A lot of the issues that we've been concerned about with the North OC Water Basin have been addressed in almost every single one of the maps that have been submitted and all the maps that are forward today. However, the concerns that we have been talking about, yes, we want the colleges together, but we've been crunching the data on Maptitude. We see it on the redistricting reports and everything regarding the housing insecurity, regarding things like multifamily housing, historic housing, income levels for housing and everything. And map 110 with that horizontal configuration is the one that has the most impact for renters across the city. Not just renters, but also low income and housing insecure people as well. We understand that a lot of people don't understand the rationale of keeping Fullerton College and Cal State Fullerton together. And maybe you haven't, no, never mind. I'll disregard that. But we also want to make a comment about how north of Bass and Cherry, even in the parts along Associated Road, there are newer apartments there. There are a lot more, there are a lot more higher income apartments there. Not saying that everyone who lives there is higher income, but they have strict differences from the people who live in the historic housing south of Dorothy Lane in the horizontal configuration. And a lot of those kinds of rationales are why we have been arguing for the horizontal configuration. I believe over 70% of the workshop testimonies have been in favor of that horizontal configuration. Total workshop testimonies, I believe the last one was like 85, 86% in favor of that horizontal configuration for that reason. But yeah, I just want the council to take that into consideration. We're not saying that you need to vote on map 110, but the fact that it wasn't even considered in the first place to be brought forward to me is, to all of us, is pretty concerning. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Karen Alvarado, you should be able to unmute.
Yes. Hi, good evening, Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Karen Alvarado. I am lead organizer with Orange County Congregation Community Organization, also known as OCO. And I'm calling in tonight to express my support for map 110. As you've heard, map 110 is the map that has received the most overwhelming community support during the last coalition public hearing. And this map is a product of ongoing community engagement, specifically in the hard to reach communities. And really these communities are the ones that are at the heart and center of these maps. And really what it's aiming to do is receive equitable representation in this council. This map follows all the legal requirements, and it keeps the communities of interest whole, such as the colleges, as you've heard. Among others, it considers the socioeconomic levels of low income and housing impacted communities. And the map does not prioritize incumbency, nor does it consider any candidate or current city council member in the way that the lines are drawn. So we're asking you to please elevate map 110 and consider this map for final adoption in the March 29th hearing where you'll be voting. And again, just thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Amina at mirzalawoffice.com. You should be unmuted.
Hi, good evening. Apologies, I have a cold. My name is Amina Kazi. I'm a Fullerton resident. I wanted to comment first on the Zoom link that was not published in the agenda. It was very problematic for us to do outreach to people because I just sent the link. And I understand you're trying to fix it by giving the Zoom link out right now, but those of us who are on Zoom already have the link. So I would urge you to consider to do another public hearing that's properly noticed and ADA compliant. I'm very happy that we did get such good turnout at the outreach meetings, but I do want to also point out that having 30 community of interest testimonies does not necessarily translate that those testimonies were taken into consideration by the advisory commission. By our count, our small network of folks, the Fullerton Redistricting Coalition, accounted for about 70% of the testimonies given during the workshop series. However, the map that we put forward, 110, which was also accompanied by 30 testimonials in the report, was not considered to be passed on to this esteemed body. There was a statement at the Redistricting Advisory Commission meeting that our map was political by Commissioner Tony Bashala. I would want to state for the record that we have not coordinated or consulted on the lines with any of the council members. I think it's very dismissive to say that community members who are putting hard, honest work into this process are doing so out of political will rather than caring for our community. Personally, I'd like to support map 110. I'm also interested to have a conversation about map 112. I'd like to preserve the Sunny Hills area, which map 111 does not do, as it cuts us the east side of Sunny Hills from the west side down Baston Cherry. I'm okay with the division down Richmond of map 112 in the Golden Hills area. But I do also think that having a horizontal district preserving the historic quarters and the lower income rental areas through Fullerton would serve us the best. So I do encourage you all to go back, take the time to listen to the workshop testimonies, the hearings, all the public input before you make a decision, to make sure that all of our community input is heard and taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel better, Mrs. Causey. Next comment, please.
Alicia Esperanza, you should be able to unmute. Alicia?
Yes.
Okay, it's your turn.
Speak Spanish. Hola, mi nombre es Alicia Rivera. Soy líder comunitaria de OCO y OCO es parte del Comité de Redistribución de Distritos de Ciudadanos de Fullerton. Yo he vivido en la ciudad de Fullerton por más de 20 años. Actualmente vivo dentro de las líneas del Distrito 4, donde siento que no han escuchado nuestras necesidades, dado que la comunidad latina no ha podido elegir a un candidato que refleje nuestros intereses. No me siento segura por las limitaciones de seguridad pública. Hay mucha comunidad de desamparados y necesitados que se les pueda ayudar con apoyo médico. Nuestra comunidad es más densa, ya que muchos de nosotros somos inquilinos de apartamentos, pero a nuestro representante actual le importa más los intereses de los negocios dueños de casa. Es por eso que en los últimos meses me he unido a la coalición de redistribución de distritos de Fullerton. Los miembros de la coalición son gente de la comunidad y creamos un mapa que mantiene a nuestras comunidades de intereses unidas. Es muy decepcionante ver cómo la Comisión Independiente trató el aporte del pueblo, con excepción de las comisiones Kiri y Yodi. El resto de la coalición completamente ignoró el aporte de la comunidad de Fullerton. Es por eso que apoyo el mapa 110 de Fullerton y les pido a los miembros del concilio que consideren elevar este mapa para que siga avanzando dentro de este proceso. No dejen que lo que pasó en el 2016 se vuelva a repetir. Les pido que eleven el mapa del pueblo para que todos tengamos la oportunidad de representación equitativa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Interpreter, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alicia Rivera, and I am a leader in OCO and part of the Redistricting Commission in Fullerton. I've been in Fullerton for 20 years. I live within the city limits of District 4. And I feel that we are not being heard. Our needs are not being heard. Our Latin community hasn't been able to elect a candidate. And we've had limited public safety. We have problems with homelessness and those people not being able to get the health care that they deserve or the attention that they deserve. Our community is dense. We are made up of apartment renters. And currently, our representatives are more interested in business owners and also homeowners. And this is why I'm part of the coalition and part of the coalition, the redistricting coalition, because they're made up of community members. It is very disappointing to see how our comments weren't accepted or treated, or map 10 wasn't being brought up and elevated. And so we do ask that map 10 be brought up for consideration. Don't allow what happened in 2017 to repeat itself. And we do encourage and ask that you do consider map 110 for a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment, Madam City Clerk.
And caller number ending 9901, you should be able to unmute. Caller ending 9901. There you go.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, my name is Arnell Dino. I'm over 30-year resident of East Fullerton, and I just wanted to echo what I think a couple of my neighbors have said. Whereas 110, for a lot of reasons, was definitely a map supported by the community. If not, I think one of the challenges that we run into here on the east side of Fullerton is that several iterations of the map have, if in the new District 2, I think 112 and I think also 110, that the assumptions being made that myself being east of the 57 freeway has a lot in common with those with my neighbors on the hill closer to Rolling Hills and State College. I would request that if there is a map that is considered, that it be 114, because lumping those of us who are south, who are pretty much east of Associated, there's a number of apartments there. A lot of the students from Cal State Fullerton also live there. Makes better sense to keep us in 3. And those of us east of the 57 also in whatever iteration of 3 ends up being passed. And I would strongly request that we don't have a lot in common with our neighbors in 2 on top of the hill versus those of us who are at the bottom of the hill closer to Cal State Fullerton. And that 114 be considered if you can't do 110. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
And Harry Lagenbacher, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I'm Harry Langenbacher, and I'm here to support MAP 110, and specifically, specifically because I have been advocating for the District 3 in our map, which I live in. And I advocate for keeping the 2 colleges in the same district. In this city of education, these are very important institutions. There are 23,000 students enrolled at Fullerton College, 40,000 students enrolled at CSUF, and this district also includes 2 high schools. We need to accommodate them and integrate them in a good way into our neighborhoods. My example, I live 300 feet from the nearest classroom at Fullerton College and a couple hundred feet from the ZTA sorority, which is a state college sorority. My neighborhood streets are sometimes blocked off by the city for events at the high school and college. Street parking here is by permit. Every year I have to buy permits to be able to park on the street, as do other neighborhoods around both colleges. In my neighborhood, there are protest signs about building another stadium at Fullerton College when there's also one at the adjacent high school. So the influence of traffic and parking activities are common to people who live around these colleges. And I also advocate for the horizontal districts rather than vertical separation between districts 2 and 3. With our horizontal district 3, we have a high percentage of renters and low and moderate income versus district 2, which has higher income levels and higher home ownership levels. In the flat land between the colleges, there's higher density housing, such as apartments and tract housing and historic housing. Whereas when you go north up into the hills, higher up, you have custom housing and large single family and luxury housing at the summit. East Coyote Hills performs a natural separation between the north and south, both physical and economic. The hills themselves, like I said, have the custom higher cost housing.
And that's your 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next comment, please.
Caller with number ending 6442. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes. Hi, my name is Julie Rayburn. I'm a 25-year resident of Fullerton. I live in an area of Golden Hill, but with these maps, what I'm noticing is my neighborhood is often like kind of an afterthought. In some of the maps, currently I'm in District 1. Some of the other maps have us in District 2, some in 4, and some in 5. I'm really feeling like my neighborhood, it's a vintage 100-year-old homes in here. I feel like we've become an afterthought. We're the cut through from Commonwealth to Chapman, Chapman to Commonwealth. Basically, I feel like that's what this neighborhood has become, is just a thoroughfare. We've got the roundabouts. We've had huge apartment buildings put in with basically no representation in this neighborhood until just recently in the 2020 election. I really hate to see our neighborhood being separated from Golden Hill. I kind of feel like the natural cutoff would maybe be the railroad tracks. I feel like this neighborhood doesn't have anything in common with some of the others. It's fine enough with District 1, it's close enough, but with that map, I mean, we're kind of, the tail end of District 1, where I really feel the natural boundary is more to stay with Golden Hill and the vintage neighborhood across Chapman as those of us south of Chapman. I would just like to see us be able to keep our neighborhood together, because I feel like we have more interest in what's going on rather than in 4 or 5. So I'd like to see a map that would keep us either in District 1 that we are currently or in with District 2. And that's all I have to say, but I appreciate everyone's maps, that they did the work, and I appreciate the job the City Council has to do in deciding what to do. But thank you for letting me speak this evening.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
And MM, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, good evening. This is Munish calling, and I did want to say thank you to the council for being here and giving us another one of their Tuesday nights, and to everybody who is participating in the democratic process. I want to start by saying that I do agree with the decision of the council to have an advisory committee, however, with final approval from council, because all of you were elected to represent us. The committee members were not. If you were to give final decision-making to any committee, then you would be circumventing our democratic process, which I don't think anybody could rightfully agree with. Secondly, I was looking myself, and I was able to find the agenda without too much difficulty. And I also knew this meeting had been scheduled for a while, and hence I am able to call through Zoom. One of the things that I've noticed is that there was a website set up putting out conflicting information about the redistricting, and it was obvious it was a fake website because it even copied our city logo. I would like City Council or with their appointee to look into that, because even if you can't shut it down, the use of the logo does create a little bit of confusion when people are trying to get information. I would also say that a lot of people are talking about justice, but justice really is in the eye of the beholder. The underlying message behind district elections seems to be giving a voice to certain groups, but inevitably you exclude others. District elections were supposed to provide further greater representation, but in some ways they have actually excluded large portions of our residents. For instance, there are no women on council. So if we believe that district elections are working, then we must believe that all 5 men on council are seen as good representatives for women in their districts, because otherwise then the whole concept of district elections seems to be flawed. In fact, several cities are courageously fighting district elections because they're failing segments of our residents. Some groups have brought up keeping the colleges together as a community or population of interest, by the same logic being espoused that only a college student should be able to lead that district. But we all know that not every college student shares the same opinion, just like not all people of a certain race or ethnicity share the same opinion. So I would ask that council members that there are countless factors that can be used to identify which person is the best council member for that district. Populations of interest, or special interest groups are basically the same. And all of us are members of different populations or, let's say, interest groups. With that, I would say, please be cautious to not just cater to the loudest voices, but to cater to what you know is right, and to realize that 1 or 2 or 5 arbitrary factors cannot identify one candidate that can adequately represent all of us in a district or in a city. I am proud of the fact that we have such a diverse council. If you look back 10, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't this diverse.
And that's your 3
District
minutes.
elections didn't
Thank
create
you.
this.
Next
In any
comment,
case,
please.
thank you.
And that is it for Zoom callers.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk.
We had one last hand raised,
Please.
if you would indulge me.
Please.
Greg Seaborn, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you, Lucinda, and thank you, council members, for your time this evening. As the redistricting chair, I just wanted to give you just a couple of quick thoughts on some of our deliberations and some of the discussion that we had. In short, 114, that's map 114, was approved by the commission. I believe it was a 5-2 vote. The 114 was a map created by the consultant, and we felt that it represented the city in a very fair way, that the boundary lines seemed to be logical. They made sense. It didn't seem to split communities of interest. The folks who were looking for map 110, map 110 we felt had some issues with it. So the closest thing that looked a little bit better was 112. You know, they kept talking about, I say they, I think it was primarily the coalition, wanted to keep the college and the university together. I disagree with that, but nonetheless, 112 keeps the college and the university together as well, and it takes care of some of the issues, a little bit better balance than 110 was. So we ended up approving 114, or recommending 11452, and then we went on to recommend 112 and 111 also on a 5-2 vote. So for your consideration, if you have any questions about the commission's process or deliberations, I'm happy to answer those questions for you. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Mr. Seaborn?
Yes, sir.
You said that map 114 was moved 5-2. Was map 112, was that also moved 5-2?
You know, I believe it was, although actually I think it was 4-2.
I think it was 6-1.
Was it 6-1? I don't remember on that one.
Yes.
That could be.
Madam Clerk, what was it?
I was smart enough to put it in the staff report.
Thank you.
Map 114 was a 5-2 vote, and public maps 111 and NDC map 112 were a 6-1 vote.
Councilman, any further questions, sir?
No, that was it.
Then I'll thank Chair Seaborn. Any other public comments?
We actually had a couple more hands pop up, and I'll ask people on Zoom that if you'd like to speak, please raise your hands now. Otherwise, we have 3 more speakers, and that will be it for Zoom.
Please, next comment.
And Susan Cheng, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, or good evening, sorry. My name's Susan. I'm with Adi for Justice. We're a nonprofit organization. The communities we serve in Fullerton primarily consist of Asian American, Latinx, low-income communities of color. And several of our community members live along Orangethorpe, Commonwealth, and neighborhoods near Fullerton College and Cal State Fullerton. In these areas, you'll see plenty of old small businesses, low-income multifamily homes, and an abundance of fast food restaurants and a growing number of community members trying to find stable housing. Many of our communities faced similar issues due to the lack of resources provided, such as lack of affordable housing due to gentrification and lack of rent control. We're also noticing that there's more and more young people in the large student populations of Cal State Fullerton and Fullerton College being actively involved in Fullerton's civic life. Aside from housing, young people face similar issues similar issues and shared interests, such as environmental issues. And this was one of our core communities of interest when creating our map 110. While we are frustrated that the Advisory Commission didn't advance map 10, we do appreciate the divide in map 112. We know that we have many renters across the center of the city and the east side of the city. And the reason that we've been advocating for this horizontal divide instead of a vertical one is that it's the most effective way to maximize a renter community in the city. In a vertical divide like map 114, the renter community is several % lower than in maps 112 and 110. And the historic homes, the housing insecure, the middle income communities across the city are more dense around Fullerton College than they are north of Baston Shuri. None of our communities have anything in common with communities north of Skyline. And if we could incorporate both of these housing insecure communities, we would. That's why we urge the city to go with a horizontal commission like in maps 110 and 112. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Anna Letty, you should be able to unmute.
¿Sí me escucha? Bueno.
Just one second. We have the interpreter coming.
And for the interpreter, should we have her like stop every few 30 seconds so you can note, or should we
Maybe
let her
about
go?
a minute and a half,
You-
because
you
there's
want-
a three minutes,
you
so
wanna
that
let her
would
know?
better. Thank you. Sí, buenas tardes. Voy a asistirle con la interpretación. Le darán 3 minutos si sería tan amable de
Empiezo.
dar unas frases y luego yo le interpreto para que sea mejor la interpretación.
Y luego,
Ok, muy
just to
amable.
clarify, for interpretation, we double the time to 6 minutes.
Perfect, thank
So-
you. Y para aclarar las cosas, con la interpretación le dan más tiempo, o 3 minutos en total para usted, y luego los dan 3 minutos para interpretarle. Así que estaría bien si le puedo interrumpir después de unas frases. Adelante.
Ok, muy amable. Buenas noches, alcalde y miembros del concilio. Mi nombre es Analeti Hernández y soy líder de fe en OCO. Y OCO es parte de la coalición de redistribución de distritos de ciudadanos de Fullerton.
Gracias. Hello, everybody. Hello, Mayor and City Council member. My name is Leti Hernandez, and I am leader from an organization called OCO and the Coalition of Redistributing of Fullerton.
Yo he vivido en Fullerton por 20 años y me congrego en la iglesia de San Felipe Benizzi. En el área de Fullerton, donde yo vivo, la comunidad es principalmente latina. Actualmente vivo en el distrito 5 por la Lemon y la Camagüey.
I have lived in Fullerton for 20 years, and I have gone to the church named San Felipe Benitez. My area is primarily Latin, it's a Latin community. I live in District 5 between Lemon and Commonwealth.
Yo vivo en unos apartamentos de bajos recursos y sé la necesidad de tener vivienda accesible. Donde vivo, sé que tienen una lista de espera muy larga y por eso sé que mi comunidad necesita mucha ayuda para poder vivir con dignidad.
I live in apartments where it's considered low housing, and it's important to have access for affordable housing. I'm currently on a wait list, and those wait lists are very long. And our communities, it's important that our communities have that help that they need.
En donde yo vivo no hay mucha seguridad pública. Se necesita mucha atención médica para las personas que son vagabundos y con problemas mentales. Nosotros nos sentimos muy inseguros.
Where I live, we currently don't have a lot of public security. We need help. We need resources like medical care and to help out the homeless and also people that have mental disorders.
También creo que las universidades deben de estar unidas en un solo distrito para que los estudiantes juntos puedan luchar por sus necesidades en común, como el tránsito y viviendas justas para toda la comunidad estudiantil.
And so I also believe that the universities and the colleges need to be all unison, all in one, so that students can fight for their needs, such as transportation and affordable housing.
Y el mapa 110 hace eso. No ignoren a la comunidad que necesita de buen liderazgo dentro de este concilio.
And so MAP 110 does represent that. Please do not ignore the community and what we have to bring.
El mapa fue dibujado dado al aporte directo de la comunidad y sus experiencias vividas.
The map was drawn by the director and also the experiences.
El mapa no protege a ningún candidato miembro actual del concilio. Por favor, les pido que vuelvan a elevar el mapa 110.
And so this map does not come from any, or does not favor any council member, nor did it come from any council member. So I urge you to please support MAP 110.
Es el único mapa que toma el aporte del pueblo. No nos ignoren. Aprendan de los errores del pasado. Hay que mostrar cómo Fullerton ha cambiado. Les agradezco mucho y que Dios los bendiga.
And so please do not ignore the maps. We have learned a lot from our previous past and lessons. And I thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Gracias.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
And this is our last hand raised, Jody Vallejo. You should be able to unmute.
Thank you very much, Lucinda. I'm Dr. Jody Aegis Vallejo. I live in District 2. I am a professor at USC with extensive expertise in demographic analysis and population change. I also served as a member of the Advisory Commission. And one of the things that really guided my thinking as a member of the Advisory Commission is thinking how we define communities in our city. As mentioned by an earlier speaker, there are many intersecting communities in our city. They might become active at any particular time over any number of reasons. But here in this context, a community is this group of people who've defined themselves as such and who've come together over this specific issue that they care deeply about, which you've heard a lot about tonight and we heard a lot about as commission members. I was really dismayed serving on the commission that the majority of commissioners completely disregarded the community and rejected MAP 110 by voting against forwarding it to the council for your consideration. And I just think, how can we call ourselves a community and build goodwill and enthusiasm for the work that needs to be done for our collective future if we don't actually listen to the community? I really want to thank Greg Seaborn for serving as chair. He did an excellent job and answered all of my many questions. And also for mentioning MAP 112, which is the map derived from 110. MAP 112 is created by Dr. Levitt. It's a map that keeps existing communities together while also considering multiple communities of interest. The boundaries are easily identifiable. They're contiguous, they are compact, they adhere to federal regulation. And as a commissioner, I really urge you to consider MAP 112 seriously in your deliberations along with the other maps. It adheres to the law and population requirements. I think the rationale presented tonight for horizontal districts makes sense given the demographics. And these considerations are certainly central to the task at hand, but this map is the closest to the one developed by the community. It is people working together who define communities of interest. It is people working together who define our futures in Fullerton, and I ask that you please give this map, MAP 112, serious consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Vallejo.
And no more speakers.
We will bring this back to council. I will close this public hearing. We will discuss this here on the dais. And before we do and ask questions of our demographer and our staff, let me ask my fellow council members to join me in celebrating International Women's Day this evening. You know, tonight we are tasked with a part of a larger process of redistricting, guided by the principles of the Fair Maps Act, using new census information. I trust this evening will be data-driven and fact-oriented. Look forward to the discourse from council accordingly. But I do wish to thank Commissioners Jaramillo, Vallejo, Seminara, Nelson, Bushala, Vice Chair Lira, Chair Seaborn for their service. And again, I encourage members of our community that are watching this meeting to submit a map if they wish to do so by March 19th. That said, any comments or questions from council? Councilman Silva.
Yeah, I also want to start by thanking the advisory commission. I know that they took a lot of time and effort, and there was a big commitment on their part to move forward with this process. Having been part or been on the in the audience for the previous process, I can appreciate the work that the committee did, the commission did, and with that, I was a little surprised, I guess, that the commission did not, I guess, submit 110, given that the majority of comments and participation were from individuals supporting 110. But on that same note, I do appreciate that the commission was able, along with the demographer here, able to come up with a map that reflects a little bit of 110. And with that said, this is a tough process for all of us, trying to determine which way to go and how to do it. And I don't know if Mr. Seaborn's still online, but I just, if he is, are you there, Mr. Seaborn?
Yes, I am.
Just a quick question for you. So we've heard that the majority of the testimony and participation was from the advocates for 110, and I guess you being the commissioner, was there a general feel as to why the commission would, I guess, and this might put you in a tough situation, why the commission didn't move 110 or forward it to us?
Sure, I can give you some of the discussion that we had, and that was that 110, and I'm looking at it right now. So 110 was 3.6 miles long from essentially Euclid all the way down to beyond the 57, down to Placentia or Placentia Avenue. So it's a very long, narrow district that connects a lot of different communities that really don't have a lot in common with one another. Folks that are just east of the 57 have virtually nothing in common with the folks who are just off of Euclid. That's such a long, far distance that it makes it really challenging. I mean, similar things could be said about almost every district. And just being honest here, every district has its flaws. There's something that's not perfect about all of them. And I don't think we'll ever find a district or a map that actually is perfect, that everybody would agree on. That said, one of the big issues with it is the fact that it is so long, that's District 3 is so long, and it connects these different neighborhoods that really don't have necessarily a lot in common. 112 holds to the tenet of what we heard the coalition argue, which was that the college and the university must somehow stay together. Some of the comments I heard, and certainly not speaking for everyone, but some of the comments I heard is that just doesn't make sense, that the university and the college, they're far apart. B, they operate and cater to two different groups of students, and that they have somewhat different functions. While they're both education, one serves a different sort of purpose than the other as far as the student body is concerned. So there were some concerns about that. Looking at it, my argument, at least, or my concern looking at it, was that if we are interested in keeping things like the universities together and having a so-called university district, then we should also look at things like transportation and have a district that includes our airport and our downtown transportation center. I mean, that doesn't, to me, make a lot of logic, but neither does having the college and the university, which are a couple of miles apart, tied together. So you can make this argument about any special group, class, business, industry that you want and say, well, these need to be tied together in a district. And frankly, that in and of itself doesn't make a lot of sense. It ignores things like keeping the district compact. District 3 on 110 and even on 112 is not very compact. It stretches pretty far. Although 112 does get it a little more compact. It moves the mass from Euclid and takes it just south of Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So some pros and cons to those.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Seaborn. Yeah, and one of the things that the callers did mention that it came into a little more focus is the renters, because if you look at the community just east of Cal State Fullerton, the GEM district, there is, which I currently represent, there is a dense community with a lot of apartments and renters and low socioeconomic residents, and it does play into the section in 112 where it goes below Chapman. Some of those areas there I'm familiar with from having knocked on doors for a lot of campaigns, and the combination there does bring in a few more, I guess, the community of interest of renters and apartment people living in apartments. So, again, this was a tough call, but it seems right now that combining the commissioners, all of the commissioners' perspective, and combining that with the community input, I was glad that they included 112. And Mr. Mayor, I would move to at least move 112 forward and bring it back on the 29th for final approval, since it does bring in the approval of the commission and as we've seen here today, the approval of many of the speakers that have spoken here, and from what I understand, spoke at the various commissions. So I think that brings together the residents and our commissioners.
Councilman, if you favor map 110, sir, you are a member of this deliberative body. You are welcome to bring that map forward if you'd like. There's nothing preventing you or any other council member up here doing the same thing. So I encourage you, if you feel strongly about one map over another, why compromise? Why not bring the map that you like forward? So, so we can ask the questions necessary, get the answers necessary, and make the most deliberative decision for our residents whom we serve. So if you find that there is a map, sir, that you prefer over the other, I encourage you to act on that.
Yeah, and I just made a motion to move 112. I think that does. Again, I'm respecting our commissioners that we appointed with the input of the public.
Understood.
I think this ties both of them together, and to be quite frank, given that 110 wasn't moved forward, I don't know if that would get through here with this body. I may be wrong, and I could be wrong, but if somebody else wants to move that, we can certainly have a discussion on it.
Very well. Any other comments from council? Councilman Zora.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have actually just a question, two questions. Mr. Mayor, did we close the public hearing? Is this officially
We did.
closed? Yes.
We did.
All right. The question I have actually is for the demographer. There was one of the maps, I think 114. You said it had the highest deviation or a higher deviation. How does this work if this map is chosen in a future outlook for our population? Because these maps are going to stay for 10 years, and we may see growth in different parts, and because it's such on the edge, it's 9 point something, and it's teetering on that minimum 10% threshold.
That's a good question. We have to look at the numbers as we currently have them, in part because we don't know exactly where we're going to see growth or change over the next 10 years. And I could tell you numerous stories from this redistricting process where cities that went through the districting process even just 2 or 3 years ago estimated where growth was going to occur between 2010 and 2020, and were wrong about that. Because, when we think about growth, we often think about the big new developments, not the little infill developments, not the generational replacement, not the smaller projects that come throughout the course of the decade. So we do have to look at these numbers as they currently are. Now, what we can look at is if we know that if we think that a 9% deviation is more likely to be out of balance in 10 years, it could be the case if we think that growth is going to be random across all the different districts. In this map, I think District 1 is the most underpopulated. If we think that growth is going to happen more in District 1, then by the end of the decade, it could be the case that that district has caught up with the other 4 districts. And so this is where we get into this murky water of prediction about future population growth. But it certainly is something where it's like a trade-off. By achieving that, in this map, we were able to use Euclid as a very clear dividing line. We were able to use Commonwealth as a clear dividing line. And if that makes sense, then it could be worth trading for a percentage point or 2 higher deviation, but that doesn't make it a better map. That could be a trade-off we're not willing to make. And then we say, well, actually 114 does that. We think it looks pretty, but it doesn't represent this community.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, sir?
No further questions.
Very well. Councilman Dunlap, anything, sir?
I've had a chance to review the many meetings that have taken place and the work of the committee, and so I'm very thankful, having been a commissioner in the past myself. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into the deliberation, not just at the meetings, but ahead of the meetings. And I think what's interesting, it was telling at the outset of the meeting that Dr. Levitt said, I think it was that each of the Fullerton meetings had more participation than the entirety of the meetings in the city of Anaheim, which is a larger city. And I think that's a testament to the community involvement or engagement here. But I think it's especially important to note that, while I've seen reference made to, and I've heard it this evening, to a popular map, the reality is, and I'm not discounting special interests, but the reality is the many voices who spoke in support of this map were special interest groups. And so I think it's important to note that because, here we're trying to gauge and say that there's not this, wealth of participation across the community. I just don't think that's the truth. Some of my own personal views, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fullerton's a city of roughly 23 square miles with 140,000 people, and I think it's silly that we have to carve the city into districts. Obviously it wasn't my choice to do that. State law has indicated that. And so we're forced to deal with, the law in front of us. But I think as I look at it, I think that really the most simple and straightforward map with kind of the solid separation, and I think really, I think the best map that was presented is map 114, and so that's the map that I'm willing to support. I also think it's interesting. There's a lot of talk about this fact that there needs to be, that Fullerton College and Cal State Fullerton and Hope University, there hasn't been, actually they haven't made reference to Marshall Ketchum. They left that one out. But, in any case, I think it's important to note because we've had similar issues, and I don't want to confuse or conflate matters, but over the years, we've had, the whole our town, not college town debate that was several years back where they brought forward the play to, essentially vacate Nutwood, give it over to the university. And as a planning commissioner at that time, what I found interesting was that, we learned that essentially you give something over to the Cal State University and it becomes state property. And so they're not coming to the local, city or municipality for land use decisions. They're basically doing it themselves through the state. And so here we are, at least some people are asserting that we should in fact be giving away, some right of special representation to, 2 largely commuter schools, for people who may or may not even have need for the local city governance. And so I think it's just silly. I think that itself is both, overly politicized, and that's, some of these maps, it's the definition of gerrymandering. And so, having said that, I'll be making a substitute motion to support map 114 and bring that forward.
Very well. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, sir.
I think Councilmember Dunlap makes an interesting distinction that Cal State Fullerton, while we're proud to have it and it's a major employer and large population center in the city, it is state property. It has its own police force, separate from our Fullerton police force. And so the notion that there's an automatic commonality between Fullerton College and Cal State Fullerton, I think, becomes even more distanced when you analyze it. What I find interesting is many of those who have spoken before the council tonight who are advocating certain maps did not initially want this city council to make the final choice. They advocated, most of them advocated for a commission. A commission was formed with 5 members direct appointed and 2 at large. And that commission came up with their decision, which is map number 114 is the preferable map. Now, many of those who didn't want this council to make a final choice on its own are advocating that we do that we make a choice other than the one that was indicated by the commission. I think that the commission made some pretty good findings in terms of what our demographer articulated were the priorities on this. And it's clear to me that map number 14 is far and away the most compact and the most understandable in terms of the boundaries, using key arterial streets and not really varying from that almost anywhere on the map. It is clearly the simpler way to go. It's compact and comprehensible. And one of the big problems with carving up our city, which had been an at-large city before, was these boundaries, even the first set of boundaries, which I was part of advocating for, are very incomprehensible for those, especially if you have volunteers or other people who are walking precincts for you. Some of these little jogs and turns and minor streets and little carve-outs and everything, very hard for people to get their mind around. So the idea of compactness is, to me, very important. Many of the speakers have talked about it's clear what the priorities are, whether to keep the colleges together or economic classes or apartments versus homeowners. But, attempts to equalize the way this city has to be divided are very prone to failure. You certainly have very large economic class differences between the districts themselves, and to have at least some representation of different groups within a district might be preferable. It might really allow for some ability to work out differences. As one of the weaker points of map 114 was articulated by Councilmember Zara, the deviation, the percentage deviation. I note that the deviation is largest with District 1 and District 3. And I see very real possibility that those would be 2 of the greater growth districts. Now, I know this is that predictive business, but the lowest density is in District 1. And then College Town is still happening in the city on the installment method right now. We've recently made some approvals of large housing unit developments in that area. So I could see over a 10-year span where that deviation might solve itself. And without a crystal ball, none of us knows, really. If we started out even today, you might have a greater deviation 10 years out by far than what we're looking at right now. So for me, Mr. Mayor, it's a pretty clear choice. I will note that map 112 has many of the same characteristics of map 114, but does not have the easily comprehensible boundaries. And what was really a key to map 114, in my opinion, was considering that flanking the 57 freeway, you have a community of interest running vertically there, which I had never envisioned before, but it makes perfect sense to me. Otherwise, you're orphaning and stranding some of the easternmost parts of our city. Again, it's kept, as you look at where our map is now, Map 114 seems to be a very clear improvement to me. So for that reason, I would move approval of map 114.
So you're seconding Councilman Dunlap's motion,
Oh, yes,
sir?
I will second.
Very well.
Exactly. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, before you have the last word, may I make a couple more comments?
Councilman Silva.
When it was mentioned that 114 was a preferable map, but 112 was moved 6-1, and 114 went 5-2. So, and the majority of the participation from the residents was for 110 or 112, that they're similar. Mayor Pro Tem talked about, having straight lines, arterial lines. Back in 2018, I wanted to have State College as the main westernmost part of District 3, but he voted no on it to keep it as, with the line going east of State College and then coming back and then going west of State College into that Rolling Hills community. That was one of my arguments back in 2017, was let's straighten out that State College line. So, and then as far as growth, I think based on our zoning, there's going to be minimal growth in District 1, and there will be a lot more growth in District 3 and probably the southern districts, just because of the zoning we have, where we don't, areas 1 and 2 have the majority, I guess, is single-family residents with less multi-housing zoning. But so with that, again, I just wanted to make a note that and then tonight, out of the 16 speakers that I noted, 7 of them are Fullerton residents, and they voted for either 110 or 112. So whether there would be whether these 7 are a group or a coalition, they're a coalition of our residents. They stated they're from Fullerton, and I'm sure a few more probably are from Fullerton. And there was only one person who mentioned map 114, but in the same breath he said 110 or 114. So again, based on the commission and the residents, I moved 112, and I'll stick with that.
Understood.
Thank you, Mayor.
Understood, sir. I did have a few questions for Dr. Levitt. Oftentimes when we're not experts on a subject matter, we are held hostage by that subject matter. So I defer to you, sir, on these answers. One thing that I would like clarification on, do all of the maps, 111, 112, 114, meet within state and federal guidelines and the criteria?
We believe that they meet the criteria, and what we're having the conversation about is those communities of interest and differences in communities of interest and how we understand them.
That said, I do have a personal question to ask in reference to map 111, District 1. What is the Asian population percentage, sir, in map 111?
I'm just going to pull up the number so I can get it.
Of course.
Sure we're
Take your
exact, because I want to make sure that for the record we are giving the exact correct numbers.
Thank you.
In 111, the Asian citizen voting age population is 53%.
53%. What about in 112, sir?
In 112, it is 52%.
52%. And in 114?
And in 114, I believe it's 56%. Let me just confirm that. Yes, 56%.
So the highest is, in terms of District 1 and the Asian American population of voting age, is 114. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, very well.
Now, I have a question following on that. What I show the number for 112 is 61%.
So that is the total population.
Mhm.
We're looking at the next row down, the citizen voting age.
Oh, voting age, is that?
For
is-
voting
okay,
rights,
I've
we
got
use
you.
that because that's the eligible voters.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right, we do have a substitute motion on the table. Madam City Clerk, would you be kind enough to call the roll?
And we never had a second, I don't think, to Councilmember Silva's motion. So
Okay.
I guess technically it's not
I
really.
will second
Okay.
his
Now it's
motion.
technically a substitute.
All right, and then I'll make the substitute motion to bring forth 114.
Very good.
And I
We
second
got that technicality out of the way.
Okay,
Very well.
now we have a technical substitute motion, and this is to go with map 114. Councilmember Dunlap.
Yes.
Councilmember Silva.
No.
Councilmember Zara.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
And that passes 3-2-2.
If there's nothing further, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. We have a scheduled council meeting next Tuesday, and I encourage everyone in our public, once again.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. One second, sir. That indeed, if they do not like the way this particular decision was made, submit a map by the 19th, and we'll consider that accordingly. Councilman Zara.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that a clerk just fills in for the next phase, if she can explain to the public what the next steps
The next
are.
steps, the next council meeting next week on the 15th is a redistricting break for you. That is not on the agenda. The next public hearing for you will be a special meeting on redistricting on March 29th, 6:30, same location as tonight here in the chambers. And I'll reiterate that if anybody would like to submit a map, the deadline is March 19th. I've just added that to the website.
Very well. I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Have a good night, folks. Same bad channel, same bad time next time.